He walked into that banquet hall believing it was his coronation. He thought he had finally won. He even prepared 2 speeches for the evening, one to accept the presidency, and a second one to end our marriage. He just forgot a single critical detail. I own the company. My name is Alara Vance. From the outside, my life is a portrait of curated perfection. At 36, I am the founder and CEO of Vector Dynamics, a company I bled for, building it from a single idea into one of Wall Street's most formidable risk management and tech consultancies. We don't just analyze the future, we build it. Beside me, always, is Mark Redding, my husband. At 40, Mark is the handsome, charismatic face of the company. As my chief operating officer, he is the executioner of my vision. I am the architect, the strategist who designs the engine. He is the polished public figure who makes it roar. We are, by all accounts, the golden couple of New York's financial elite. Our penthouse floats above Central Park, the city lights sprawling beneath us like a galaxy we claimed for ourselves. We are fixtures in society pages, the envy of our peers, the definition of having it all. Our life is a fortress of success. The company is currently electric, buzzing with preparation for the largest banquet in our history. We are hosting it at the Apex Grand, a monument of glass and steel. The official purpose is to celebrate our crowning achievement, landing Project Aegis, a multi-billion-dollar contract that solidifies our legacy for the next decade. But there is an undercurrent to the celebration, an open secret among the executive floor. This party is also for Mark. Tonight is intended to be his ascension. I am announcing his promotion to president, a title I created specifically for him. It is, I told the board, a necessary recognition of his tireless effort in securing Aegis. As CEO, I have willingly stepped back from the daily fray in recent months. I've moved into a high-level strategic role, my focus on the 5-year horizon, the next acquisition, the next disruption. I handed the complex day-to-day operations of Vector to Mark. I trusted him with my company, my life's work. I trusted him absolutely. The concept of him failing me was simply not in my vocabulary. That is why the chill felt so foreign when it first crept in. Over the past few months, Mark has become distant. A new opacity has settled over him. When I reach for him in the quiet of our home, he pulls away, citing the immense pressure of the Aegis transition. The late nights became his new normal. Dinners went cold on the table as I listened to the muffled sound of his voice from his locked home office. He started taking secret client calls at all hours, stepping out onto the terrace in the cold, his back turned to the glass, hiding his words from me. He was physically present, but he had vanished. A creeping, arctic loneliness began to fill the spaces he left behind. It was a silence so profound it felt louder than any argument. I ignored it. I rationalized it. This is the price of ambition, I told myself. This is the sacrifice that empires are built on. When you are this successful, you pay a tax in personal comfort. I believed it was temporary, a storm we had to weather before returning to calm seas. I believed in the man I married. I believed the facade was the reality. The Fisher appeared 3 days before the banquet. I was looking for an old prospectus from our Series B funding, a file I was certain was on Mark's personal server, not the company's. I went to his home office, a room I rarely entered anymore. He had mentioned offhandedly last week that his personal laptop had crashed, the motherboard completely fried. He claimed he was using a temporary tablet until his new one arrived, blaming the disaster for a few missed personal emails. I had accepted it without a second thought. I checked his desk, his drawers. No external drive. I scanned the bookshelf, and then moved to the walk-in closet where he kept his lesser-used bags and archived hard copies. There, under a stack of cashmere sweaters I had bought him for Christmas, was the laptop, his broken laptop. It was cold to the touch. A small charge light glowed faintly by the port. It had not been used, but it was not broken. It was hidden. Curiosity, a cold and unfamiliar prickle, moved my hand. I carried it to his desk and opened it. The screen lit up instantly, bright and clear, asking for a password. It was fully functional. A lie. Such a small, stupid lie. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed his birthday. Access denied. I typed our anniversary. Access denied. My mind raced. I tried the name of our old dog, the one we had to put down 2 years ago. Nothing. I tried Aegis Project in every variation. Denied. The air in the room felt thin. Why was I locked out of my own husband's computer? I felt a sudden, sour taste in my mouth. An old memory surfaced. A name he had mentioned once in a drunken, sentimental moment years ago. A name from before me. My fingers moved without conscious thought. Serapina. The desktop bloomed into view. The background was a photograph. It wasn't me. It was Mark, on the deck of a sailboat, grinning at the camera with a carefree joy I hadn't seen in years. His arm was thrown around the shoulders of another woman, her head tilted back in laughter, blonde hair whipping in the wind. It was Chloe Benson, my chief legal counsel, the woman who had been my maid of honor, my best friend. My vision tunneled. The blood in my veins slowed, turning to ice. I could not feel my hands. I sat there, frozen, staring at the image, the sunlight, the blue water, the betrayal, my training, the methodical, analytical part of my brain that built Vector, took over. It was an out-of-body experience. I watched my own hand move the mouse, clicking open his email client. It was all there. There were folders I did not recognize. One was labeled Post-Aegis Strategy. I clicked it. It was not about Vector. It was a chain of correspondence with a team of lawyers I knew by reputation. The most ruthless divorce litigators in the state. The subject lines were clinical asset division, spousal support scenarios, and Aegis post-withdrawal. My breath hitched, but I kept digging. This was not just an affair. This was an exit strategy. I found another folder, this one encrypted. Serafina unlocked that too. It contained blueprints, detailed financial models, timelines, and personnel lists. It was a meticulous plan to methodically siphon the key accounts from Project Aegis, our billion-dollar triumph, and divert them. The documents outlined the transfer of our primary clients to a new shell corporation, a corporation I had never heard of. I opened the registration documents for that new entity. It was registered under a single name. Not Mark Redding. It was Chloe Benson. My hand was shaking. It was not a tremor, but a violent, uncontrollable quake. I closed the laptop. The click of the lid was deafening in the absolute silence of his office. My movements became automatic, precise, as if I were observing myself from outside my own body. I used the sleeve of my robe to wipe the trackpad, the keys, the lid, erasing any print, any trace of my presence. I slid it back into the darkness of the closet, under the heavy stack of cashmere sweaters, aligning it perfectly with the faint dust outline on the shelf. Exactly as it was. I walked on unsteady legs to the master bathroom and locked the door. I gripped the cold marble of the vanity, staring at my own reflection. I was pale, my eyes wide and unfamiliar. I leaned over the sink, expecting to be sick, but nothing came. Only a series of dry, racking heaves that tore at my throat. The shock was too profound for tears, too deep for anger. It was a physical paralysis, a void where my trust and my marriage used to be. I was numb. I was still staring at the stranger in the mirror when I heard the front door open. The familiar, casual sound of his keys hitting the glass bowl on the console table. "Ilara, I'm home." His voice, so normal, so cheerful, was a desecration. It scraped against my raw nerves. I stepped out of the bathroom just as he entered the bedroom, already loosening his tie. "Long day," he sighed, flashing the easy, charming smile that had disarmed boardrooms and investors for a decade. He opened his arms, moving to embrace me. His suit jacket brushed against me, his arms closed around my waist, pulling me against his chest. I smelled his cologne, a scent I used to associate with safety and home. Every nerve in my body screamed to recoil, to push him away, to claw at his smiling, treacherous face. Instead, I forced my muscles to relax. I raised my arms and rested them on his shoulders. I even managed a small, tired sigh. "You must be exhausted," I murmured into his collar. He pulled back, his eyes bright and energized. "I am, but I have something for you." He reached into his coat pocket and produced a small, dark blue velvet box. An early gift, for the banquet. My fingers felt numb as I took it. "Mark, you shouldn't have." "Of course I should have," he said, his voice warm. "I want you to look absolutely stunning when I get promoted. When we get promoted, really. It's for us." I opened the lid. Inside, resting on white satin, was a diamond necklace, a delicate platinum chain holding a single, flawless pear-cut stone. It was exquisite, and it was agonizingly familiar. My heart did not just stop. It seized. It was not like the necklace my father gave me before he died. The one I had lost last year. The one I had turned the penthouse upside down searching for, weeping in frustration while Mark patiently helped me look, patting my back and calling it just a thing. It was the necklace. He had not just been planning to leave me. He had been stealing from me. He had plucked a piece of my past, my father's memory, from my jewelry box, hidden it for a year, and was now he was giving it back to me, a recycled trophy, a demonstration of his complete control. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it burned away the shock, leaving something new in its place, something cold and hard and focused. I looked up from the necklace, and the mask snapped into place. I forced a gasp. I let my eyes widen, meeting his. "Mark, it's perfect," I whispered. I turned and lifted my hair, letting him fasten it around my neck. The diamonds felt cold against my skin, like a shackle. He kissed my temple. "Only the best for you, Ilara." He spent the next hour talking, brimming with energy. He talked about the party, the seating charts, the final flourishes on his speech. He talked about our future, about how this was the beginning of everything we had worked for. I sat on the edge of the bed, nodding, smiling. I played the part of the proud wife, the partner, the fool. I played it perfectly. As he was heading to the shower, I called out to him, "Mark." He turned, framed in the doorway, the picture of success. "Yes, I'm so proud of you," I said, my voice sweet and utterly sincere. "I even have a little surprise of my own for you, for the party." "Oh," he asked, a flicker of genuine intrigue in his eyes. "Just wait," I said, smiling. "After your speech." That night, I lay beside him in the dark. I matched my breathing to his, feigning sleep, just as I was certain he was feigning his. We were two predators lying in wait, two strangers in the wreckage of our life. But he was comfortable in his deception, arrogant. He thought he was the only one in the room with a secret. My mind, however, was on fire. It was operating at a speed I didn't know it possessed, analyzing variables, running scenarios, calculating risks. I was alone. I could not trust Chloe, my best friend. I could not trust Mark, my husband. I was surrounded by enemies in my own home, in my own company. I looked at the clock on the nightstand. The digital red numbers glowed 2:03 a.m. I had 48 hours. I left the penthouse at 5 a.m., slipping out the service elevator. Mark was asleep, his breathing deep and even, the sound of a man without a care in the world. My first instinct as a CEO was to call my board, to lock down my servers, to begin an internal investigation. But my first instinct was wrong. Vector Dynamics was no longer my company. It was a hostile entity. Mark controlled all operations, which meant he controlled the flow of data. Chloe controlled the entire legal department. Any move I made through official channels would be seen by them immediately. They would activate their plan, bury the evidence, and paint me as unhinged. I was a queen checkmated in her own castle. I needed someone outside the castle walls, someone they didn't control, someone they feared. The name came to me in the cold morning air. Julian Thorne. Julian had been my head of cybersecurity, a pale, restless genius who spoke in code and treated the digital world as the only true reality. He was a genuine paranoid, which is precisely what had made him so brilliant at his job. He built Vector's security from the ground up, a digital fortress of his own design. 6 months ago, he had retired. The official story, crafted by Mark, was that Julian had become difficult, resistant to the new, more agile systems needed for Project Aegis. They had a massive public argument in the main conference room. Mark had been reasonable and forward-thinking. Julian had been volatile and obstructive. I had believed Mark. I had trusted my husband, my COO, over my own cybersecurity chief. I signed Julian's massive severance package, relieved to have the conflict over. Now, I saw that argument in a horrifying new light. It was not a conflict. It was a purge. I didn't use a company car or a car service. I stood on Park Avenue and hailed a yellow taxi, paying cash for the ride to a nondescript apartment building in Brooklyn. I used a burner phone I kept for emergencies to check his last known address. He opened the door on the third knock. He looked exactly the same dark hoodie, eyes red from staring at screens, a cup of coffee surgically attached to his hand. He was surrounded by a constellation of monitors, data streams scrolling in the dark. He did not look surprised to see me. He just took a sip of his coffee and leaned against the doorframe. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. My blood ran cold. You knew, and you let me walk into this. He shrugged, a sharp, bird-like gesture. I didn't know the what, he said, walking back into his apartment, leaving the door open for me. But I knew the who. Mark Redding is a virus. You just happened to be the host. I followed him in, the smell of stale coffee and ozone filling the air. You didn't retire, did you? Retired, no. I was fired. He gestured to a screen. I caught it early. 6 months ago, the Aegis framework. It was brilliant, but it had holes. I thought they were flaws, so I patched them. The next day, the holes were back, but they were different, more subtle. They weren't flaws. They were doors, built-in vulnerabilities. I tracked the code. It wasn't an outside attacker. It was internal. It was Mark. He swiveled in his chair. I confronted him. I told him the COO was either a compromised asset or a traitor. He laughed at me. He told me I was obsolete, a dinosaur who couldn't handle next-gen architecture. He went to you. By the end of the day, my credentials were wiped, and I was a retiree. I gripped the back of his chair, my knuckles white. He locked you out of your own system. Julian finally smiled. It was a cold, thin, deeply unpleasant expression. You can't lock a ghost out of the machine he built. Mark is a salesman. He thinks code is just a tool. I think it's a religion. He tapped a few keys. A new window opened, displaying a live schematic of the Vector mainframe. My mainframe. He wiped my credentials, but he didn't know about the kernel-level backdoor I built into the primary server on day 1, a just-in-case protocol. I've been watching him ever since. I knew he was building something for himself. I knew one day his ego would make him sloppy. His smile faded. I'll be honest, Ilara. I didn't think he was stupid enough to betray you. I thought you were in on it. He's planning to leave me, I said, my voice flat, and take my company with him. At the banquet tomorrow night. Julian's eyes lit up. Showtime. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my personal phone, opened my private banking app, and initiated a wire transfer. I'm sending you $5 million. Right now. It's from a personal account, untraceable to Vector. His eyebrows shot up as the transfer confirmation hit his own device. I need a team, I said. Not Vector employees. People you trust. Ghosts. I need you to find every email, every wire transfer, every hidden server. I want to know who he paid, who he's sleeping with, and what he plans to do next. I want the blueprints of his entire shadow company. I want to know everything, Julian, and I need it all by tomorrow. It's a lot, he said, not looking away from the screen, his fingers already flying. It'll be messy. I don't care, I said, walking to the door. Be messy. And Julian tomorrow night. I need you at the Apex Grand. Julian didn't just have an apartment, he had a command center. Within an hour, his ghost team, a network of former intelligence analysts and disgruntled white hat hackers he trusted, convened in a secure co-working space in Dumbo that didn't officially exist. The place hummed with the sound of high-velocity fans from custom-built servers. For the next 24 hours, I lived on black coffee and adrenaline, watching the guts of my life get splayed across a wall of monitors. What Julian found was not just a theft, it was a dissection. Mark and Chloe weren't just planning to steal Project Aegis. They had already built a vector parallel. Using my company's proprietary algorithms and my data, they were running competing risk simulations for our biggest rivals. They were using offshore servers, bouncing signals through 3 different continents to mask their activity. They were selling my own intellectual property back to the market, undercutting my bids and poisoning my client relationships. How long? I asked, my voice hoarse. Julian typed, his face illuminated by scrolling lines of code. The first server was registered. 13 months ago. This wasn't a plan. This was a long-term hostile takeover. They've been bleeding you dry for over a year. Then came the next blow. He financed it with your house, Julian said, his tone flat. He pointed to a series of encrypted bank transfers. He used the power of attorney you gave him after your ski accident 3 years ago, the one for emergencies. He had taken out a massive, multi-million-dollar mortgage on my penthouse, which had been in my family for 2 decades, which I had paid off in full and funneled the cash directly into their shell corporation. The full scope of their plan unfurled on the screen, a masterpiece of corporate and emotional terrorism. It was a 3-pronged attack. Phase 1 was the banquet, Mark's promotion, followed by his deeply sorrowful announcement of our separation. It was designed to shatter me publicly, to paint me as the unstable, heartbroken wife, too distracted by her personal failings to lead a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Phase 2 was for Monday morning. While I was still reeling, Chloe Benson, my best friend, would file a devastating lawsuit against me personally. She would allege gross mismanagement, erratic behavior, and a breach of fiduciary duty. She would use manufactured evidence memos she had doctored, emails she had faked to create a narrative that I was a liability. Phase 3 was the kill shot. With the lawsuit public and my reputation in tatters, Mark would convene an emergency board meeting. He would call for a vote of no confidence, leveraging the board members he had bought or blackmailed. It was perfect. It was airtight. In the span of 72 hours, I would lose my husband, my best friend, my home, and the company I had built from nothing. I would be left standing in the ruins, holding a worthless necklace, while they walked away with everything. The board, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He said he had the board. He can't do any of this without the board. Julian was already there. He has a folder labeled Board Insurance. Let's see what he bought. The screen split into 7 sections, 1 for each of our board members. 3 were clean, but 4 were flagged. Julian cross-referenced Mark's hidden ledgers with offshore accounts. He found massive 6-figure payments to 4 of them, all in the last 2 months. My stomach tightened. Then I saw her name, Mrs. Thompson. The air left my lungs. Not her. Anyone but her. Mrs. Thompson was not just a board member. She was family. She had been my father's first hire, his most trusted advisor. When he died, She was the one who held my hand at the funeral. She was the one who encouraged me to take his seat, to build Vector into what it was. I had her over for tea at the penthouse just last month. I considered her an aunt. This pain was sharper than Chloe's betrayal, deeper than Mark's. His was greed. Chloe's was jealousy. But this felt like the final crumbling foundation of my entire life. He bought her too, I said, my voice hollow. He bought everyone. Wait, Julian said. He was leaning in close to the screen, his expression intense. The payment structures are different. The other 3 got lump sums, wire transfers to shell companies, standard bribery. Hers is different. He dug, his fingers a blur. It's a series of smaller weekly payments, not to an offshore account, but to a private oncology clinic, a high-risk experimental treatment center. A new window opened. Julian had hacked the clinic's records. The patient was Arthur Thompson. Her husband. I knew Arthur was sick, I whispered, but she said the treatment was going well. It wasn't, Julian said quietly. His insurance dropped him. The experimental protocol costs over $50,000 a week. She couldn't afford it. She was desperate. Julian's program, still sifting through Mark's encrypted data, suddenly flagged a new file, an audio file. It was a WAV file, captured from a call Mark had secretly recorded. He must have kept it as leverage. Julian hit play. First, Mrs. Thompson's voice, frail and weeping. I can't. Mark, please, I can't do this to Alara. She's like a daughter to me. Then Mark's. His voice was not angry. It was calm, reasonable, and utterly reptilian. You're not doing anything to Alara. Mrs. Thompson, you're saving your husband. You know the insurance company won't pay. You know this is his last chance. Is your loyalty to a daughter who's already forgotten you worth more than Arthur's life? A sob. He'll die. Yes, he will, Mark said, his voice soft as poison. Or he'll get his treatment, and you'll cast a simple vote when I ask for it. A vote to save this company from an erratic CEO. It's just business. You get to be the hero who saves Arthur. The audio file ended. He wasn't paying her for her vote. He was extorting her. He was leveraging her husband's life against my company. She wasn't a traitor. She was a victim, trapped in the most monstrous way imaginable. I stumbled back, the rage so potent it made me dizzy. This was the man I had loved, the man I had shared my bed with. I picked up my phone. This time, I used my real one. She answered on the first ring, her voice choked, as if she'd been crying for weeks. Ilara, he's been paying, hasn't he? I said, keeping my voice gentle. For Arthur. She broke. A terrible, ragged wail came through the phone. Oh, Ilara, my dear girl. I didn't know what to do. He's a monster. He came to me. He knew. He knew about the insurance. He said he would cover everything. As a friend. And then, last week, he told me what I had to do in return. He said he would stop the payments. He said Arthur would be dead in a month if I didn't agree. I know, I said, my voice hard as steel. I heard the recording. Then you know. I know you're a victim, I said, and this ends now, but I need you to do exactly as I say. I need you to trust me. Anything, Ilara, anything. Good, I said. First, you are going to that banquet tomorrow night. You are going to wear your most beautiful dress. You will smile, and you will follow Mark's script perfectly. You will nod when he looks at you. You will play the part of the loyal board member who believes he is the future of this company. But Alara, listen to me. From this moment on, Vector Dynamics is covering every single cent of Arthur's medical care, past, present, and future. I am wiring the funds to the clinic tonight. Mark has no more power over you. He just doesn't know it yet. The rage had crystallized into purpose. I was no longer a wife. I was a weapon. At 3 a.m., I convened an emergency session of the Vector Board. Not all of it. Just the ones who mattered. I routed the call through Julian's secure servers, bypassing all company channels. Mrs. Thompson's face appeared on my screen, pale but resolved. Then came Arthur Vance and Maria Singh, the two remaining members my father had appointed, the ones whose loyalty was beyond question, the ones Mark hadn't even bothered trying to corrupt. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Thank you for joining me at this hour. What I am about to show you constitutes an active, ongoing act of war against this company. For 30 minutes, I laid it all out. Julian fed the data to their secure portals in real time, the parallel company, the stolen algorithms, the offshore accounts, the multi-million-dollar mortgage on my home. I showed them the payment ledgers for the other 3 bribed board members, and then I played Mark's audio recording of him blackmailing Mrs. Thompson to secure her vote by leveraging her husband's life. Arthur, a man who normally never raised his voice, was visibly shaking with a controlled fury. Maria was silent, but her eyes were lethal. He intended to destroy her, Mrs. Thompson said, her voice finding its strength, and then destroy all of us. He is using this company as his personal war chest, and he will gut it by Monday morning. He will not get the chance, I said, my voice cold and precise. I am calling for an immediate vote. I require an emergency resolution, effective immediately, granting me unilateral authority to act on behalf of the board to protect the company's assets from this imminent and catastrophic threat. It was not a discussion. It was a formality. "Aye," Arthur boomed. "Aye," Maria said. "1,000 times. Aye," whispered Mrs. Thompson. The resolution was drafted, signed digitally, and filed on Julian's private server within 10 minutes. I now had the full, legal, unanimous power of my board backing my next move. The next few hours were a blur of surgical preparation. While Julian's team compiled the gigabytes of evidence into prosecutable packages, I worked with a private legal team strangers to Vector, paid from my personal funds drafting the termination contracts for Mark Redding and Chloe Benson. They weren't just simple terminations, they were ironclad, citing felony fraud, conspiracy, and catastrophic breach of fiduciary duty, nullifying every clause of their 7-figure severance packages. We prepared the paperwork to file criminal charges. My next call was to Julian. The hotel. Mark controls our corporate security team, and they'll be on site tonight. Already handled, Julian's voice crackled. I've been in touch with the head of security at the Apex Grand. Their in-house team has, let's just say, they received a significant bonus in their payroll account this morning, courtesy of your personal funds. Their loyalty is to the hotel, and tonight, I am the hotel's representative. They'll be reporting to me, not to Mark. Every exit, every service elevator, every stairwell will be under our control. Nobody leaves unless I say so. My final calls were to 2 very specific journalists, one at the New York Times, one at the Wall Street Journal, the 2 most feared financial reporters in the city. "Marcus," I said, my voice light and social. "It's Alara Vance. I'm calling to personally invite you to our banquet at the Apex tonight. No, not as press. Please, you're my personal guest. I just have a feeling. You'll be getting an exclusive story that will define the quarter. Trust me." I made the same call to the reporter at the Journal. Their curiosity, I knew, would be unbearable. They would come. I finally leaned back, the first rays of gray light breaking over the East River. I had been awake for more than 24 hours. I looked at the finalized schedule for the banquet. Mark had personally approved every detail. The massive screens, the multi-camera setup for his speech, the crescendo of triumphant music he had chosen. He had built his own stage. He wanted a performance, I said to Julian, who was watching a live feed of the banquet hall being set up. He's going to get one. The grand ballroom of the Apex Grand was a cathedral of wealth. Chandeliers, each the size of a carriage, dripped crystals 30 feet above us, refracting light onto the sea of New York's elite. Hundreds of our employees, our most valuable clients, and our key investors mingled. their glasses full of champagne, the air humming with the sound of success. It was a golden, opulent room, built to celebrate conquerors. I made my entrance on Mark's arm. I had chosen my armor with care. A crimson silk gown that left my shoulders bare, a severe and striking color that commanded attention, and around my neck, cold against my skin, hung the diamond necklace, my father's necklace, the one Mark had stolen and returned to me. I felt composed, clear, almost unnervingly serene. I was a surgeon about to make the first incision. Mark was radiant. He was in his element, the center of every conversation, the recipient of every handshake and backslap. He was wearing a custom tuxedo, his smile so bright it looked painful. As we passed the bank of photographers at the entrance, he pulled me close, dipping me slightly as he kissed me for the cameras. The flashbulbs exploded. "You're perfect," he whispered into my ear, his voice proprietary. "My goddess." I simply smiled at him. "It's your night, darling." Across the room, I spotted Chloe Benson. She was holding court by the champagne fountain, draped in a shimmering silver dress that looked like liquid mercury. She was beautiful, and she knew it. She kept finding reasons to touch Mark's arm, a light, accidental brush of her fingers, a shared laugh that was too intimate. As I approached, her eyes met mine. For a fraction of a second, I saw it. Not triumph, pity. She genuinely felt sorry for me, the oblivious wife she was about to destroy. It was the last mistake she would ever make. "Chloe, you look breathtaking," I said, my voice warm. I turned to my husband and my best friend, standing side by side. Just then, Marcus from the Times and the reporter from the Journal, who had been observing the room, walked over. "Mark, Chloe," I said, looping my arm through my husband's. "I want you to meet some special guests of mine." I introduced them. "You must talk to these two. They are, truly, the stars of this evening, the future of Vector." Mark beamed, lapping up the attention, launching into his practiced charm. Chloe smiled, a tight, secretive expression. I excused myself for a moment, letting my gaze sweep the room. In the back, near the main exit, standing perfectly still, was a man in the hotel's dark security uniform. He was taller than the others, his posture too rigid. He met my eyes from across the expanse. Julian Thorne. He gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. All exits were sealed. The trap was set. The lights in the ballroom began to dim. The chairman of the board, one of the three Mark had bribed, walked onto the stage. He gave a glowing introduction, full of praise for the dynamic leadership and bold vision of the man who had secured Project Aegis. And then, to a thunderous, soaring orchestral piece that Mark himself had chosen. My husband, Mark Redding, walked onto the stage. He stood at the podium, basking in the spotlight, a conquering hero ready to claim his kingdom and rewrite history. He looked out at the adoring crowd, his eyes eventually finding mine. He smiled, the victor's smile. Mark let the applause wash over him for a long, theatrical moment. He drank it in, straightening his suit jacket, his smile a perfect blend of humility and power. The bright, hot spotlight isolated him, just as he had planned. "Thank you," he began, his voice resonating with false sincerity. "Thank you, Robert, for that incredibly generous introduction." He gripped the sides of the podium. This was his stage. "You know," he continued, "people talk about success as if it's a destination, an end point. But the people in this room, we know the truth. Success is a journey. It's about sacrifice. It's about the late nights, the hard choices. It's about having the courage to tear down what's comfortable to build what's necessary." He was in full performance mode, the charismatic leader I had watched him play for a decade. When I took on the daily operations of this company, I was given a mandate, not just to maintain, but to innovate, to be bold, to look at the incredible foundation we had and ask, "What's next?" He paced a step, owning the stage. What is our true vision for the future? It is not just about one project. Project Aegis is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the beginning of a new vector, a vector that is agile and fearless and ready for the challenges of the next 50 years. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the front tables where the board members sat. I could not have done this without the complete, unwavering trust of our board of directors. He looked directly, pointedly, at Mrs. Thompson. She held his gaze, her expression perfectly, stiffly neutral, and gave him the slow, affirming nod he was looking for. His smile widened. He thought he owned her. Their trust, their wisdom, he continued, has empowered me to make the tough calls. It's not always easy. Shedding old, inefficient legacies. It can be painful, but it is the only way to make room for true, disruptive innovation. And that is the vector I am prepared to lead. The air in the room was electric. The clients were eating it up. The staff was inspired. My two journalist guests were scribbling furiously in their notebooks. Then, he turned to me. His expression softened, shifting from the bold CEO to the devoted husband. The cameras in the room, the ones he had hired to film this, zoomed in. And finally, I must thank my partner, my wife, Ilara. The room erupted in applause again. I smiled and nodded. The perfect, supportive wife. The spotlight from the stage caught the diamond necklace, and it flashed, a cold, bright fire. Ilara, he said, his voice thick with a manufactured emotion that made my stomach turn. You have been my foundation, my rock. You built this company, and you entrusted me with it. Your belief in me. It has been the wind beneath my wings. He let the silence hang, a perfect beat. And because you are my partner, and because tonight is a night for truth and for bold, new beginnings, I have one final personal announcement to make, which I will share right after this. He was relishing it. The theater. He was laying the groundwork for his second speech, the one where he would announce our amicable separation, the one that would make him the sympathetic, powerful new leader and me the tragic footnote. He raised his champagne glass, which a server had placed on the podium. But first, join me in a toast to Vector, to the future. The entire room rose to its feet. To the future, they echoed, a wave of hundreds of voices. The music swelled. Mark stood there, his glass held high, his face a mask of absolute, unadulterated triumph. He was the king. He had won. He had my company. He had my friend. He had my house. And he was about to discard me in front of the entire world. He smiled, a perfect, winning smile. He had no idea that, in the back of the room, Julian Thorne had just pressed enter on his laptop, a quiet command that, in an instant, executed the board's emergency resolution. It locked Mark's credentials, froze every personal and shell company bank account he possessed, and officially triggered the termination for cause clause in his contract. He was celebrating a victory, unaware that he no longer had a job, a bank account, or an escape route. He was already a ghost. He just hadn't realized it yet. As the applause for his toast died, I stood up. The scraping of my chair leg was a small, sharp sound in the large room, but hundreds of eyes turned to me. I walked calmly, not rushed, toward the stage. Mark was still smiling, his glass held high, though a flicker of confusion crossed his face. He thought I was coming to kiss him, to be the dutiful wife. Instead, I walked past him to the second microphone and took it from its stand. He lowered his glass, his smile tightening. "Thank you, Mark," I said. My voice was amplified, clear and cold, hitting the back wall of the ballroom. The room, which had been buzzing, fell into a deep, expectant hush. That was an ambitious speech. I turned to face him under the hot lights. You are right. Tonight is about truth, and it is about new beginnings, but you seem to have forgotten a few details in your vision. I gave a single, small nod to the back of the room, where Julian was watching. On the massive 30-foot screen behind Mark, the triumphant Vector Dynamics logo vanished. It was replaced by a stark black screen. Then, a new logo bloomed, Redding Innovations. Beside it, a flurry of screenshots, emails, the ones from his laptop, the ones to his divorce lawyers, the subject line, post-Aegis exit strategy, was blown up for everyone to read. A wave of shocked gasps swept the room. Mark's face lost all its color. He lunged for the podium as if to grab his notes. "Ilara, what is the meaning of this our internal—" "I'm not finished," I said, my voice cutting him off. The screen changed. Now, it displayed a complex diagram of offshore servers, routing maps, and a list of Swiss bank account numbers. Mark has been incredibly busy. He and Ms. Benson have been running a vector parallel for over a year, using our proprietary data to service our competitors. The reporters I invited were on their feet, their faces lit by their phones as they recorded. "This is absurd!" Mark shouted, his voice cracking. Chloe, standing near the front table, looked like a ghost. She turned and began to walk quickly, not run, toward the main exit. Mark started to step down from the stage to follow her. They didn't get far. Two men in crisp hotel security uniforms. Julian's men stepped in front of them, blocking their path. They were trapped. "And you spoke so movingly of bold leadership," I continued, my voice dripping ice. The screen changed a final time. It was a still, grainy image of Mrs. Thompson captured from a security camera in a cafe, weeping. And then, the audio file played. Mark's voice, smooth and venomous, filled the grand ballroom. "Is your loyalty to a daughter who's already forgotten you worth more than Arthur's life?" A collective, horrified silence. The sound of Mrs. Thompson's broken sob echoed off the crystal chandeliers. This was not business. This was pure evil. I turned my full attention to my husband, who was standing frozen, exposed and ugly in the spotlight. "Mark Redding," I said, my voice precise, almost conversational. "Pursuant to Section 7 of your employment contract, and by the unanimous emergency authority granted to me by the Vector Board of Directors, for felony fraud, conspiracy, intellectual property theft, and a catastrophic breach of fiduciary duty, you are fired." I let my gaze drift to Chloe, who was being held by the arm. "You as well, Ms. Benson. Our real legal team will be in touch." Two men in dark suits, who had been blending in near the orchestra, walked calmly up the stage stairs. They were not hotel security. They flashed badges. "Mark Redding, Chloe Benson. You need to come with us." The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound I had ever heard, as they were cuffed and led off the stage, past the dumbstruck faces of our clients and staff. Mark's composure finally shattered. He thrashed, his face a mask of purple rage. "Ilara," he screamed, his voice raw. "You can't do this! You can't!" I leaned into the microphone one last time. "I just did." I watched them being escorted out of the ballroom. Then, I turned back to the stunned audience. I smoothed the front of my crimson dress, touching the cold diamonds at my throat. My sincere apologies for that. Interruption. "The bar is open. Please, enjoy your dessert. And one last thing. Vector's official Project Aegis is secure, solvent, and will now be launching ahead of schedule. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to connect with you all. So, please, comment below and let me know where you are listening from and what you thought of the story. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you really enjoyed it, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.